I'm 350 years old. Of course there have been lovers. Just because I love nature doesn't mean I'm betrothed to it. Though sometimes, nature needs reminding.
Hey guys, it's CBD Gamer Girl here. Welcome back to my channel. So recently I started thinking about how old each of the companions are in Baldur's Gate 3 because I feel like this isn't usually explicitly mentioned by any of the companions. And I saw a couple of things recently which surprised me, like about their potential like estimated ages. So I did a little bit of research on this as well as thought about, what I had gathered from the game as I was playing it. So I'm going to go through each of the companions and talk about their estimated age and why I think they're that age. So let's start with Lae'zel. So in my opinion, Lae'zel was probably somewhere between like 20 to 22. Because I know they mentioned that Githyanki mature pretty quickly and they're considered adults by around like 16 to 18 years old. And she did mention a couple times that she's a warrior in her prime. So that would probably put her around like 20 to 22 with like a couple years of experience. And recently there was a game called Idle Champions, which was like an official Dungeons and Dragons strategy game, and they partnered with Larian Studios, and apparently some of the characters had like a spotlight card about their stats, and it said that Lae'zel is 22 in that game, so that kind of confirms that that's like about the range. It's kind of interesting that she's like one of the youngest actually out of the bunch. Next, let's talk about Wyll, who I think is the second youngest. So for Wyll, we have like a more clear timeline because he specifically mentions that he got into the pact with Minthara when he was 17, and he's been in the pact for 7 years. So that puts him at 24. I feel like, it kind of matches up. Like he's pretty mature, but he doesn't seem like really old. So 24 seems like a good age for Wyll, honestly. Now let's talk about Karlach. I think like Karlach is a little bit more unclear to me. I think she's probably between like 30 to 40. I know that she spent 10 years in Avernus, and she talks about her life like someone who had like a full adult life before her time in Hell. So I kind of think she probably went to Avernus in like her late teens, like maybe early 20s, which would probably put her like around 30 or like a little bit older. And tieflings age pretty similarly to humans overall, but just live to be a bit older. So, I mean, her looks kind of give like she's in her 30s, I guess. Next, let's talk about Gale. I think Gale is probably like 40 or like in his 40s. I mean, he looks like he's in his 40s, first of all. And because he's a human, he's gonna age normally. One thing that was a little bit of gray area to me is like when he actually started working with Mystra, because he did say that he was basically a prodigy and her attention was on him since he was really young, but I'm not exactly sure what young means in that situation. But he's been with Mystra for quite a while, and obviously he was her lover, so that would have at least put him in his early 20s, and quite a bit of time has passed since then. So I think at this point he's around 40, but he's one of the ones that I'm the most unclear on. So let me know if you have any ideas about how old Gale would be, if you know more lore than I do. Next, let's talk about Shadowheart. She's definitely in her 40s, like 40 plus. The reason she looks so young is because she's a half elf, so it matures her body slower than humans. There is some like dialogue or banter that she has when you're in the House of Grief, saying that there are books like recounting her 40 years of life, basically. And she was taken by Shar's cult as a child and has been loyal to Shar for over a decade, so her being in her 40s makes sense. And again, that Idle Champions game, like in her spotlight card, it said that she was 48. So I guess that kind of makes sense. I mean, that's still older than I expected her to be, but I think it makes sense with her being a half elf and how much life she's lived already. Astarion was a little bit confusing to me because his grave said that he was 39, and then he was mentioned at some point that he's been alive for 200 years since then as a vampire, which would make him actually 239 years old. And also when he actually passed away as an elf, like he was already an adult and he was respected, wealthy, he was like connected enough to be a magistrate. I've seen one Reddit thread that kind of says that the 39 age on the grave was actually incorrect and it should have been 139, and then it's been like 200 years since then, which would put him at 339. And according to the Idle Dungeons game, it listed Astarion as 350, which is closer to that number. So I think honestly he's just generally between 300 and 400, like somewhere in that range, but he's very old. And the reason that 39 seems a little off for being the age on his grave is because that would have been very young for an elf, because elves have a really long lifespan typically. Okay, now let's talk about Halsin. Halsin straight up says in his dialogue that he's 350 years old, so we don't have any guesswork about his age. Jaheira, I think she's probably about 150 years old. She's been alive since Baldur's Gate 1, and at least 100 years have passed since then. And she was already kind of old in BG1, so my estimate, based on the lore I've read up on, would put her at about 150 years old. Minsc, he's technically older than Jaheira, but he was petrified, so his biological age is different than his chronological age. So physically, he's a lot younger. I'm not really sure where he would be at, but chronologically, he's over 150 years old. And last but not least, we have Minthara. Minthara is also another one that I'm very unsure about, but I think she has to be at least 100 because she's considered an adult drow. Kind of makes sense as to why she still looks so young, because drows age so slowly physically. Anyways, this was a really interesting video for me to make. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if I misspoke on anything, or if you have any other theories about how old they are, or if you have more lore that kind of points to a more exact age for some of these characters. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy my content. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.